Asyle, the engineer, and the island. Week 50, Day 1. The weather cleared again, so in the morning I loaded my pots into the solar kiln, reset the panels after having been blown around a bit, and then did my morning chores before separating the microbes and having lunch. In the afternoon, I swapped out the electrofuge pots in the kiln and got back to building the next batch, as the barometer suggests it should be a fairly nice day again tomorrow. Other than that, not a lot going on today. Week 50, Day 2. It was kind of cloudy today, so it wasn't going to be a good day for pot cooking after all. It wasn't raining at least, so I did my morning chores and separated the microbe cultures again before spending the afternoon making one last batch of electrofuge pots. I thought I was done yesterday, but then remembered that I still needed to make 10 more in addition to my original 50 to catch the alkali metals. I was getting a bit tired of that activity, though I've gotten quite good at it, so I was glad to finally be done at the end of the day. Week 50, Day 3. Light rain today, so after I separated my microbe cultures in the morning, I figured it was time to start working on the second level of the electrolysis tower. I got the bamboo I'd stockpiled and spent a few hours building the frame for the next level up. I left the ends of the framework for the previous level exposed, so they'd be easy to plug into and keep everything roughly the same size and shape. I stopped for lunch and then spent the next couple of hours filling it in. My legs are killing me from all the climbing up and down and up again while carrying water and/or claycrete. My only comfort was the fact that it was so much cooler in the cave than it would have been if I were working outside. I had a couple of hours to kill at the end of the day, and I was just exhausted, so I did a little writing before getting ready for bed, getting started on the On a Rail chapter, where Gordon gets a glimmer of hope that there's something he can do to help undo the mess he's in. Week 50, Day 4. The rains grew heavier today, and I was pretty sore from yesterday. Fortunately for me, it looks like a lot of the heavy lifting for this project should be over now. My nitric acid has been building up over the last few weeks, so I figured it was a good day to do some mining. After separating my microbe cultures in the morning, I got back to the old routine of drilling and having the explosives machine mix up my ANFO rods. I did a couple of blasts before having a late lunch, and got in a couple more before the end of the day. As I dumped the ore into the grinder, I felt pleased that this may be the last time I ever have to do it again. Week 50, Day 5. The weather finally cleared today. I loaded my first batch of pots into the solar kiln in the morning, before going on a round of foraging and separating my microbial cultures. I had lunch and swapped out the pots again, which unfortunately meant I had to put off copper smelting until the next sunny day. I checked the barometer, and the pressure was only going down a little, so I might be able to do it tomorrow. In the meantime, I started building the electrolysis plates for each cell of the electrofuge stack, along with the new turbine rotor and cover for the fractionating column. The electrolysis plates were pretty easy to make, just a load of clay spread thin on a dusty floor and cut into squares. As for the turbine rotor, as good a job as the tesla-turbine has done so far, I must admit that it's really not the right tool for the job. I need torque more than I need speed. Not that I would have really known that until now. The best way to do that would be to eject the water from the central pipe on the end of a long lever arm, a lot like the world's first steam engine, the Aeolipile, designed by Hero of Alexandria. However, in that design, force would only be transferred by momentum, like a rocket engine, in which case a lot of the heat energy would still end up as kinetic energy for the steam, which I would like to capture instead. I would rather take advantage of pressure, like a steam or internal combustion engine, which are basically the same thing, let's be honest. But I've long hated that design. Too many moving, rubbing parts. No cylinders. Instead, what I came up with in my mind was a sort of wheel or reverse impeller with channels in it that would direct the steam out along a spiral path, and the steam would enter a chamber shaped sort of like a ramp in the wall surrounding the wheel. The steam should expand, pushing against this surface, rotating the wheel, and in such a way that, from the wheel/steam's perspective, the cavity in the wall looks like an expanding cylinder, like in a steam engine. Once the wheel passes this cavity, pressure will build up again until it reaches the next one. And by making the chambers offset relative to half of the spouts in the wheel, it'll ensure that the other half will always be pushing while the others are building up pressure. This system would comparatively be much simpler to build, especially out of acid-proof clay, and less likely to break than my Tesla turbine, which is frankly what I deserve for just jumping in and not thinking the design through just for the sake of making something with the name Tesla in it. And like the Tesla turbine, I could still stack these impeller modules as high as I needed to get the desired amount of torque for a given amount of steam. Furthermore, I figured I could build some gaps into the rotor that would let the steam out of the wall chambers once the spout had passed them, which would also push a tiny amount on the wheel as it escaped, so that hardly any of the available mechanical energy would be wasted. I built several of these turbine modules in case I needed them, and set them aside to dry before moving on to the fractionating column. One more great thing about this new turbine design was that I could pipe the exhaust gases out of it easily, so I didn't need the fractionating column built into or around it after all. I just copied the parts I made for the fractionating column on the solar tower. The only major modification I made was the addition of an extra electrofuge cell to the bottom of it, where the exhaust water and gases from the turbine could collect, and the first stage of electrolysis could begin. I designed it so that the water level would remain above the bottom edge of the fractionating column, creating an airtight seal to keep any of the electrolyzed gases from getting out, while still allowing the solution of positively charged metal ions to spill down into the rest of the stack. This whole apparatus will sit just offset from the turbine and generator. I had a little time left to kill at the end of the day, and I wanted to think of a way to harden the bamboo pipes from sulfuric acid, but the only materials I could think of that would be resistant to it were ceramics, which weren't strong enough to act as an axle, nor did I relish the thought of making kilometers of glass pipe to go all the way down into the Earth's crust, which would probably crack under the weight without my knowing it, and the fragments would end up permanently clogging the hole I worked so hard to make. For now, I'll have to leave that problem on the back burner, so instead, I just spent my time doing a little writing before bed. Week 50, Day 6. It was quite overcast today, so it looked like I wouldn't be cooking any clay parts after all. Instead, I did my morning chores and separated my microbe cultures again before lunch. Looking at the graphs I've been making for the different selection features I've been looking for in each culture, they started out slow and then really started taking off as those features started becoming dominant in the population. Now things seem to be evening out again, but I'll let them go at least another week to be sure. After lunch, I started looking for something to do around the base. Unfortunately, without the kiln, there wasn't a lot more I could do for the Electrofuge project, so I took the opportunity to perform some much-needed maintenance on the solar array while the sun wasn't out and it wasn't pouring down rain, replacing stretched cables and taxed rubber bands. The bathhouse was also overdue for a good scrubbing, so I worked on that for a while before moving on to the kitchen and replacing the ethanol in the refrigeration system. I had a few hours still before bed, and decided to discontinue maintenance operations to go right and rest for the evening, finishing off the On a Rail chapter with an emphasis on the feeling of triumph when the rocket was launched. Week 50, Day 7. With the weather clouding up yesterday, I expected it to start raining again today, but it hasn't. So, although it was Sabbath, I took advantage of the opportunity to cook the electrolysis plates and turbine parts for the Electrofuge project, loading them into the kiln in the morning before doing my morning chores, transcribing my recordings, and listening to the sermon on the radio, which took a little longer than normal because I needed to tune up the radio a little. I went down to the underwater dome as usual, tended the garden, and fed the sharks before having lunch myself. Between all those tasks, I didn't get around to separating my microbe cultures until after lunch, when I swapped out the turbine parts for the fractionating column parts in the kiln. It had been an awfully busy Sabbath thus far, so I spent the remainder of the evening writing, but unfortunately, I was kind of starting to get tired of the Half-Life writing project, moving into the apprehension chapter. It's kind of a coming back down to earth moment in the story, where Gordon has to deal with the fact that things still aren't fixed, and there's still a lot more work to do, and things are only going to get harder from here on out. I guess I decided to channel my feelings of fatigue with this little project as I was writing it, though I'm not sure how it sits with the ichthyosaur fight. Just makes Gordon feel annoyed rather than frightened, and I think I might want to go back and change that later. Blooper Reel. It was kind of cloudy today, so it wasn't going to be a good day for pot cooking after all. Please don't take that out of context. Light rain today, so today. I did a couple of blasts before... Google Docs, what are you on about? Come back here with my lines? Find time to refresh the page, and here I was thinking I wouldn't have anything for the blooper reel. I did a couple of blasts before having a late lunch, before going on a round of foraging and separating, whatever that means. The Aeolipile. Sorry, that's just a weird thing to say. The Aeolipile, designed by The steam should expand. The steam, especially out of acid-proof cray. Excuse me. Furthermore, gotta work that sneeze out of my throat. Looking at the graphs I've been making for the different selection features I've been looking for in each culture, that's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? Hey there, thanks for listening all the way to the end. I'm glad you didn't run out of steam. On that topic, I'll be interested to see how the new steam turbine performs when I hook it up to the geothermal well. So, if you'd like me to expand on that topic, you can press the subscribe and bell buttons to get notified as soon as the next episode is ready. Now, it's coming to the end of the year, and I think it's worth mentioning that this weird little experiment will be coming to an end soon. I've only got so much material written down, even though I've got ideas for things to make that could probably go on forever. So, if you'd like to help me out, now is probably the best time to share this series with someone who you think will enjoy it, since that's kind of what this project is all about. And since you apparently enjoyed it enough to watch it this far in, you can press the like button to say so, which also helps me out by telling the algorithm to do a little bit of that sharing for you. Also, if you'd like to share some of your thoughts, stories, and perspectives on the episode, maybe a time you built or worked with steam engines, or if you just want to talk about whatever, feel free to write them in the comments section below. I genuinely love to know what you have to say, and I'm always open to suggestions and corrections. That said, thanks again for listening, and hope to see you here again next week.